$13,000? $13,000? $13,000? That doesn't even include bushing, tuning rack, paint, new battery cables that I got. $13,000? What about my time? $13,000? $13,210 on this build. So, you want to turbo your M50. Let's talk money. Let's talk about the important stuff. Not how much power I made, not how long it took. Let's talk guap. How much money did it take for me to finish this build? Where did I put the money and what did I get out of it? We'll talk about parts, labor, and every single thing in detail, so you could maybe build a car just like this if you wanted to. This right here is my build sheet and parts list of everything that I may have put into this car to my knowledge. Hopefully, we're about 30 to 45 seconds into this video and I already got your view, so I can go ahead and say I spent $13,210 on this build. Obviously, I'm sure there's things that I haven't accounted for, but this is the majority of everything. This list is a breakdown of pretty much everything I put money into, from engine rebuild to lines to exhaust piping and even labor. This should be a rough estimate for if you want to copy, mimic, and do this build on your own dollar. Let's start with the engine. The engine is an M50 non-Vanos, stroked to 3 liters. The stroker kit itself was $300. The engine itself was $250. The oil pan to swap it into this car was $400. I also got the oil pan shortened for clearance. That was $400. I got a head job on the non-Vanos head. That was $350. A cut ring head gasket, $250. Gaskets to reseal the whole engine, $200. ARP head studs, $200. Since they're E46 pistons, they have an issue with their oil rings, so I got 2 sets of piston rings. M50 piston rings and M54 piston rings. Each of those were $180. Machining the block was $150. Standard size bearings for main bearings and rod bearings was $100 each. The Seems Legit oil pump tensioner was $60. And the harness adapter wiring was $30. On the engine alone, rebuilding it with the cost of the engine included, I spent $3,050. Damn, that's a lot of money. Next, we've got the motor mounts. The engine mounts themselves are rev shift. They were $150. The trans mounts were $60. FX Stage 3 clutch, eBay special, was $300 for the clutch. And it is holding, baby. Holding good. So the engine was around $3,000 to build, and the motor mounts, trans mounts, and clutch was around $510. Moving on to the intake side, we have a Vibrant 12-8-10 intercooler that sits right in front of my radiator. All around the intake system, we have 2.5-inch intercooler piping. That was $120. The intercooler was $300. 2.5-inch to 2-inch coupler to the turbo was $20. 2.5-inch to 3-inch coupler, $20. Blow-off valve flange, $10. Tile blow-off valve, $200. M50 silicone ICV kit was $50. M50 intake silicone ICV fitting, $35. The MAC valve, which is zip tied to this runner right here, you'll see it underneath. The MAC valve was $60. Push lock vacuum lines, which I highly recommend. They are the line right there. It's a push lock vacuum fitting. It doesn't slip on, it pushes in and you have to push on a little tab to pull it out. They're awesome. Those were $30 for a kit. The valve cover catch can fitting right here turns this into a 10AN fitting, was $30. Down below you can see my Vibrant catch can. That was $120. My turbo guard that you can see on the turbo was $50. And the rest of the vacuum lines and fittings that I may have JB welded to my intake were $20. That brings our intake side of things to a total of $1,090. Wow, that's a lot of money. Okay, next, the exhaust side. Another big cost here and a big piece of the puzzle. We have an RSI 24 valve turbo manifold for E30 and E34. I got it secondhand for $400. They have a version 2 out. Version 1 sucks. A VS Racing wastegate was $100. I cheaped out. I did not get a tile. I wish I did, but the VS Racing ones are also very good. 3-inch stainless steel exhaust piping. This also came in a kit. This was around $150 from eBay. My wastegate screamer pipe, which I wish I didn't have, was $40. This super special Garrett V-band from the Turbo was $36. The previous owner did not give it to me. The Turbo was also secondhand. The Turbo was $800. It was on a 1JZ. That's kind of a flex. Down the exhaust system, everything is 3-inch and V-banded. We have some Chinese resonators. That was $50. We have a Vibrant Ultra Quiet resonator. That was $90. We have about $40 worth of exhaust hangers. And we also have some 3-inch V-bands. Those were like $50. Brings our total to $920 on the exhaust side. Crazy! That's a lot of money. Holy shit. Everybody's like, wow, I thought it was gonna be $2,500, Reebs. There's a turbo kit for $3,000. Isn't that gonna work? No! That shit is garbage. It's not gonna work. Next, heat management. Is there heat management that comes in your turbo kit? Huh? A bunch of really good insulation, right? Gets fiberglass all up in your fingers and it feels like shit. Look at this. I could take a nap on this thing. Turbo blanket. We're gonna go ahead and start. $30. Exhaust heat wrap, which I didn't use, was also $30. Dragon scale heat wrap that I found on, what do you call it? Summit. Crazy. This shit, it like, I could burn it and it's gonna be good. Really good stuff. That was about $20. DEI heat sleeving. This was $35. You can get it at your local AutoZone. Really, really, really good stuff. More DEI heat sleeving. This little piece right here was around $20. So that brings our total to around $160 on heat management. You need it too. Don't skimp out on heat management. I wish I Cerakoted a lot of stuff. I'm obviously frying paint in sections that I did not want to, but it looks good. Because I spared very little expenses, I also went with a pretty hefty oil system. Now you don't need this, but I went with it for peace of mind and I thought it was gonna help with cooling. It didn't. I still overheat a little bit sometimes when I go really hard. So let's go ahead and start. Right here, we have an oil cooler cap from Rally Road with 10 AM fittings. This oil cooler cap was about $250. This oil cooler cap connects to a Mishimoto oil cooler that is under my intercooler that you can't see right now. That was around $180. On the turbo side of things, I have an oil drain fitting. That was $30. Down under my intake manifold, I have an oil distribution block. That was $70. I have an oil pan bung that can't seem to stop leaking. That was $10. I have an oil feed line that went around. The fittings for that were $10, and the oil feed fitting for the turbo was $10. My feed fitting goes around the back of my head. Feed can be as long as it needs to be. It's just gonna get oil pressure and it'll always have oil pressure. That brings our oil system to $550. Moving right along to my gauges for knowledge of what's happening with my engine. This houses my boost gauge and my AEM AFR gauge. This Rally Road gauge pod was $100. The AFR gauge was $160. The sensor sucks. They almost always go out, so I replaced it with a Bosch one. The good thing is the connectors are the same, so that's good. But you're paying $160. You're paying like an extra $60 for a sender that'll most likely go out, which sucks. The good thing about the AEM gauges is the guys that engineered these are freaking smart. So unlike these gauges, these have like 4 or 5 wires to them that you feed a dimmer and 12 volts to. 12 volts so you can change the color, and a dimmer so they dim when you turn the lights on. These badass AEM gauges just sense when there's light and they'll brighten up and then they'll get dark and they'll just dim on their own, which is crazy. That's awesome. This just needs power and a ground, while this needs like 4 or 5 signals, ground and power. Falk MFG gauge pot holder was like $40, I think. This oil pressure gauge was $80, and this oil temperature gauge was $50. Bringing our gauges total to around $480. Pretty crazy, right? Is anyone else tired of hearing all these numbers and shit? I just want to drive. We're at a very interesting point here because I'd say these are all somewhat essential. Right now, I'm gonna get into fueling and cooling, and it's not so essential. One big thing about my fueling was I wanted a large ceiling for power. So it's ready for ethanol. You don't have to have an ethanol ready fueling system. My cooling system, I was so obsessed with not having the OEM reservoir on that wheel well. So I kind of went overkill and I went with the Chase Base tucked radiator and different overflows and different other stuff that you don't need to do. So let's get into it. My fuel system, a Link Flex Fuel sensor, $250. Fuel pump relay, which is in the back, let's go check it out. This is my fuel pump relay. It is a painless wiring fuel pump relay. Super awesome, super easy. The only OEM wiring from your fuel pump you need to use is the trigger wire, that green and purple wire. You just splice that into ignition here, and everything works great. All these are labeled. This is labeled battery, this is labeled fuel pump, this is labeled ignition, and ground. That was $35. Moving on to my 340 liter per hour AEM fuel pump, $110. What a steal. I paid $400 initially for a Hellcat fuel pump because I wanted everybody to hear my fuel pump buzzing, and I wanted it to be so sick. It wasn't so sick when my fuel pressure regulator couldn't fucking keep up because the fuel lines are like this tiny on the E30. If you think you're gonna walk around and go out and gap every single car, first of all, you're probably not, and second, you will not be able to keep the fuel pressure down because that pump is just working so not hard at all to clog up your fuel system. And your fuel pressure won't be able to keep up. You won't be able to keep it down no matter how good of a fuel pressure regulator you have. You will not be able to keep the fuel pressure down. Downsize, whoever the hell you are, because you used to be me, and go to a 340. The 340 is perfect. It'll work on E85 and everything will be cherry. I think you might be able to even get away with a 425, but don't go to a 525. It's overkill, it's OD, it's too much. That's like twin turbo LS territory. This is not that. 800cc injectors, these are Deca 80 pounders. Those are also probably not gonna be enough for ethanol. I hit 500 horse on ethanol and we were still too lean. So probably go to around the 1000, you know, the ID 1000s are really good, and maybe even a 1200 cc injector. Those will be plenty. But these current 800 cc's are great for 91. Those were $400. My fuel pressure regulator was $50, it's eBay. The fuel line fittings right here that go to my fuel rail were $10. But Gates makes a E85 safe slip-on hose. It is the 27340. I got around $50 worth of that hose. And the hose clamps were also $20. Don't use the serrated hose clamps. Use the flat ones, if you know what I'm talking about. Bringing my fuel system to around $900. Cooling system. I currently run coolant to my turbo, so I have fittings from the head running all the way back to the turbo, and fittings from the turbo drain running to the block drain. So I utilize those two ports. Lines and fittings were around $50. My coolant overflow, Amazon special, $30. The Chase Base custom radiator hose that I have, because their tucked radiator has inlets and outlets on both sides. Look at this big ass hose. This was $120 to make. I had to buy all sorts of silicone and all sorts of heat shrink and all sorts of shit. $120 to make that Chase Base hose. This fan is not good enough, but it was $80. It is a 14-inch American Volt fan, supposedly good for like 3,000 something CFM. It can't keep up. The fan relay kit was $40, also painless wiring. Actually, I think it was Spal. $40, but still really good. And the thermostat housing, I welded this feed and this, or not this feed, but this pressure tester thing. This was around $100 for my buddy to weld. Awesome. Bringing our cooling system cost to $430. Big cost, big money. Spending a lot of money here. Next, we have hoses and fittings. That was around $500. 4AN hose kit was like $150, and 10AN hose kit I ended up spending like $150 as well. Also under miscellaneous costs was powder coating. Matte black powder coated valve cover. I have a powder coated subframe, powder coated engine arms, powder coated trans mounts. All of it is covered in oil now because I'm leaking. It's BMW, what am I supposed to do? That was around $200. Bringing hoses, fittings, and other stuff, aka powder coating, to $500. So, what are your big costs gonna be? My biggest costs was my OBD1 Link G4X plug and play ECU, $1,200. The Garrett Turbo was $800. Labor, I paid my buddy Native Engineering for custom piping. He did all the intercooler piping. He did my down pipe. He did my screamer pipe. He also cut my oil pan. That was $1,100. I also paid for a tune that will also be very expensive. That was $1,100. And like I mentioned before, my Chase Bay's radiator and filler neck were $800. So, bringing our grand total to a whopping $13,210. That's a lot of money. I tried to get the best of the best stuff, and I also went a little OD on a lot of stuff. So, if that amount of guava scares you, you could just do the essentials. The essentials are highlighted in green here. Assuming you have a well-built engine with good compression, it's gonna be about $8,000 for the essentials. So you're saving 4 bands. But that's also assuming that your engine is mint. Man, I probably could have bought a brand new car, honestly. Like, was it worth it though?
Drink your water.
This has more charm than a new car though. I think it's definitely got more charm than a new car. I mean, wait till my side skirts come in. Let's say you had a perfectly good motor. If you did just the essentials and did everything yourself, you could spend as little as $4,600 on everything. $4,600, not sparing any, of the crazy shit. Like I went a little OD, but if you did just the essentials, you could turbo your car for $4,600 and did everything yourself. But I am super happy with how I did it. Outsourcing the labor, it did not take much time. The car didn't sit at any unreputable shops. The tune didn't take very long. The car was not in this garage for a total of maybe 2 or 3 weeks at max. And I'm really happy with how everything went and how quickly it all happened. The issue with builds like these is a lot of us, I'm only 20, and I'm very, very grateful that I was able to do something like this, but it's the money. It's not that much the time, it's the money. If you have the money, then awesome. You can order parts, sit on parts, wait, and just knock everything out in like 2-3 months or even less. If you have the skills, even better. But being young, having a lot of ambition and wanting to do something like this, spending $13,000 is insane. I still haven't tallied up everything for the rest of the build, but $13,000 is a lot, and it's a lot of fun. So that's good. I'm glad. I'm not upset about it. I'm not upset about it. My first go at this, and now I have a little more insight of how much a good build like this costs, or even what I need and what I don't need. If I was to go out and do this again, I know there's a lot of things that I probably wouldn't waste any money buying, or I would put money in certain other places. Yeah. I'm kind of beating a dead horse. So thank you for watching. Hopefully it's a little more insight for a lot of you on what it costs. How zoomed in are you on my face?
Like pretty zoomed in.
Okay, zoom out a little bit. If you guys have any questions, ask me, reach out to my Instagram, and I will answer as many questions as I can. Thank you guys for watching. Go make some money and spend it smart. Spend it smart. Because I'm saving all my money after this. Don't look at the other money pit right there. I am saving all of my money after this. I swear.